Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fall 2024 semester of Introduction to Deep Learning. Today, we'll discuss the flow of the project. This course includes multiple homeworks and assignments to help you practice concepts learned in lectures. The project, however, exists to demonstrate your learnings on a completely different problem of your own choosing. The whole idea for the project is that you can choose an open ended problem, scope it yourself, find corresponding datasets and prior state of the art methods, and use your knowledge from this course to train a model that ideally outperforms existing ones. Even if your model doesn't surpass state of the art performance, you can still earn good marks. We grade you based on how you demonstrate your learnings rather than the success or failure of any other particular model. So, how do you choose your project topic? Your topic can be any novel research problem. You can also try re-implementing any recent paper from conferences, investigate something that's been discussed a lot recently but hasn't been published, or tackle a real-world problem requiring deep implementation and planning. It's crucial to note that you cannot simply pick up open source code, train on a pre-processed dataset, or use ready-made weight checkpoints. You need to implement as much as possible. Only through your own implementation can we see how much you've learned from the course. When choosing a project, define your objectives and their relevance. Identify the previous state of the art in that area, the research gap you found, and how it ties back to your objectives. Next, think about available datasets. We recommend going beyond Kaggle as those datasets are often too clean and pre-processed. Look for datasets from academia or industry, which may require more pre-processing on your part. You might even need to crawl data from the internet. Your data acquisition strategy should start as soon as possible. You don't necessarily need deep learning expertise for this. General coding skills and the ability to define and clean your data are more critical at this stage. Once you've figured out your datasets, decide upon a baseline architecture. You can use existing open source code from recent papers, but you need to understand every line of it. This understanding is crucial when you start making changes to improve the model. Moving forward, your ablation studies will help you refine and improve upon your baseline architecture. You'll then compare your proposed architecture with the baseline using meaningful evaluation metrics to measure the impact of your project. Sorry. For team selection, look for teammates with diverse and complementary skill sets. Ensure everyone can dedicate roughly equal hours per week to the project. It's also important to check out how many courses they are taking alongside this one, as this impacts their available time for the project. How ambitious your project can be depends on the total available hours across all teammates. It's also helpful to have at least two teammates familiar with the topic. Additionally, having teammates skilled in literature service can prioritize papers and explain them to the rest of them. Good software development skills are essential for data access, crawling, and cleaning. Deep learning expertise is beneficial, but even if your team is new to it, you can learn and implement together. Having experience with specific algorithms can also guide your choices and testing. Finally, um, choose a project mentor. This can be a professor, a PhD student, or one of the course TAs. If you select someone outside of the core staff, you'll Still have a project TA for logistics. Your mentor's expertise should align with your project and they should be willing to commit time to guide you. Regular meetings and communication channels like Discord or Slack can help keep the project on track. The initial phase of selecting your topic, teammates, and mentor might go through a few iterations. Discussions and adjustments are normal and help ensure everyone is in sync, increasing the chances of success within the semester. Now I'll hand it over to Yuzo, who will talk more about the project milestones and submissions.
Welcome to part two, and I will describe the four deliverables you will submit for a project. The first one is the project proposal. This is a document in which you will describe your work for the project that you're planning to do. And it typically contains at least four sections. The first one is the introduction. In this section, you should describe the background of the topic or the work you propose. May think about why it is important and why you want to do this. And the second section is the literature review. In this section, you should describe every all the research papers, technical reports, or sets of publications that are working on topics related to the work you propose. And this serves as a survey of the state of the art on the topic that you propose. The third section is a baseline method. Uh, they typically come from the literature review section that I just mentioned. It basically is a currently existing method proposed by other people working on the same topic or some similar topic that you propose for this project. And the fourth section is called a dataset description, or in other words, a benchmark. So ideally, if you want to say or argue that the method you propose is important, you need a proof that your method works better than every other people's method on the topic you propose. And in order to prove this, you need to run your method on some dataset because we are doing deep learning. And so this is why a dataset is important. And you have to describe that dataset or many datasets that you are planning to evaluate your method and the baselines on. So these are the four sections that typically contains in a research proposal. The second deliverable you should have for a project is the midterm report. It is a technical report in which you mention your current progress on completing the work you proposed in your proposal. And the report should typically contain at least five sections. The first three sections should be fairly similar to the stuff you mentioned in your proposal, just that you should include more information in the midterm report because you have been diving deeper into the project or the topic you proposed, and you should technically have more results and discoveries to talk about. And the fourth section here is called a baseline implementation completeness. This actually means that you should describe your current progress of reproducing the baseline method that you selected. Uh, in other words, you should mention, have you set up the environment? Have you written the code? Have you successfully run it? Have you trained it? And have you evaluated it on your benchmark? So there's like different levels of completeness, and you should mention it here. And the fifth section is called proposed extensions. So typically, what people do when they approach a topic or a problem is that they search for currently existing baselines and they run the baselines and try to see if they can make any improvements on top of them. And so this is why you want to talk about your proposed extensions. If you want to solve the problem that you proposed in your proposal, which is also the topic that you are working on in terms of this project. And given that you have been doing a certain amount of research and implementing the baseline, you might have something in your mind about how to improve the baseline you selected. So this is called proposed extensions. You're supposed to or expected to describe them here and kind of give a brief preview of what you're trying to do next. The third deliverable is the final video of our project. It is as the name of video that basically describes your work currently done for the entire project. And by the way, by this time, you should you should most likely be finishing most of the work you're planning to do during the project because this is literally just a few days before the deadline of the final report you should be submitting. So yeah, so your video should typically contain 5 sections. The first section is called the problem description. It should be fairly similar to the introduction sections that you've written in your proposal and midway report, but just that you have to convert it to the video version of it. And the second section in the video is called a description of your implementation. So this is a description of the method that you propose for your project, the stuff that is different from the state of the art on a topic that you worked on. And the third section is called a comparative baseline. So in this section, you should talk about baseline methods that you choose from the literature that you kind of described in the literature review sections of the proposal and the midway report. Uh, and the fourth section is called the description of results. I think I think there's a section in introduction called data sets or the benchmarks. Then in order to evaluate your method, you should be running your method and your baselines on these benchmarks. Last section here is called project completeness. By this time, you should be finishing most of your work in the project. This is because there's only going to be a few days and then it will be the submission deadline for the final report of the project. So at this time, you should be finishing most of the work for your project. So just give a section to mention uh, the completeness of your project. Have you implemented the method? How have you already finished all the experiments? Have you been writing your final report? Is there anything else you're planning to do? This is the space to show these kind of information. So that's basically it for the final video. The last deliverable you will have for the project is the final report. This should be the most formal documentation that summarizes your work, and it should follow the common structure of a research paper, which means that it should contain these sections at least. And it should begin with an abstract, which is the summary of the paper's content. You should briefly introduce the audience to your method, kind of describe your method, and kind of why you are doing it, and also discuss the results on the performance of your methods on several benchmarks, and maybe discuss some possible extensions or limitations. And the next session will be the introduction. It should resemble the content that is included in the same introduction section in your research proposal or midway reports, but it should be more informative here because you have been completed your entire project, and most likely you have more stuff to discuss here. And it is also the same for next section. In the related work section, you should do the literature review as the same you do in your proposal as well as a midway report. And the third section is your methodology. You should describe your method thoroughly. If your method is based on top of some existing method, do not assume that the audience already knows the method that you base on. Make sure to describe it from scratch, and also make sure to be mathematically rigorous. And you might also want to describe the benchmarks you're running your method on, and so this is basically it. The next section is you should describe your experiments. And because we're doing a deep learning project, you should pretty much describe your training parameters, like the setup, the optimizer you use, the scheduler you use, the amount of epochs you do, what is the loss function, like all sorts of stuff. Just basically describe uh, these kind of things. You will be more familiar to these terms once you move on in homework part twos. And after describing your experiment setups, you should kind of describe your method's performance as well as your baseline method performance so that this serves as a proof that your method is an improvement on the baseline. And you should also discuss what the results mean, uh, limitations, extensions, sort of this. And the next section is the conclusion. You should kind of conclude your work as well as your paper. Maybe discuss some limitations or extensions of the method you propose. And finally, there's a list of references. So the reference is very important because without reference, describing a previous work from other people will be plagiarism. So to make sure that whenever you want to mention some already existing work, reference them and include a list of all references at the end of a paper. And also please follow a formal format of referencing paper. You can follow something like APA or something like this. Do not invent your own version of references. That's the only stuff you have to pay attention to.